Hello, I'm Billy and thank you for stopping by to view my video. Today what we're going to take a look at is how I upgraded an Apple eMate 300 to a Raspberry Pi 4 8GB model. This has a touch screen and a working keyboard. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at how I did it. Let's take a look at the LCD that made this project possible. It is an Osoyoo 7-inch 800 by 480 DSI display. Oh yeah, take a look. There it is right there. I'll go ahead and, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description down below. But this is the only LCD I found that was thin enough to fit inside the eMate cases. You don't have a bulky HDMI or power connector. Yep, the only thing you have is that 15-pin DSI cable that's going to hook up right there. Yeah, powered by the Raspberry Pi. I like that. Here you can see where I removed the original eMate bracket and I fixed it to the rear with those two bolts. And then we're not even going to bolt in our top bracket. We're just going to go ahead and set it down there like that, and it's going to keep it inside the case nice and secure. Now, the original eMate LCD cable was pretty thin and it curled around the hinge and up into the casing. Our new DSI cable is not going to be able to do that, and plus it's just not long enough. And it's not thin, but we're going to go ahead and fix that. Now, I tried to find a 1-foot DSI cable that has the contacts on the same side like that, but I couldn't find one. What I was able to find was a 5-foot cable. I cut a foot off the end of it and made this. To get the contacts on the same side, I went ahead and took a razor and I shaved it down, and now we have those. Yeah, the contacts are on the same side. Now, this is the part that's a little bit nerve-wracking. Remember, we needed to get the cable thin. To get the cable thin enough to go around the hinge, what I did was I used enhanced visual magnification and an X-Acto knife, and I made 5 cuts. What that allows us to do is to go ahead and group it together like that. Yeah, and now it'll just wrap around the hinge. And to install it, all we do is slip the cable through that slot. And now our cable just wrapped around the hinge, and we can go ahead and route it to our LCD. Let's go ahead and get the case on. Okay, we're going to make sure our cable is out the way, and it's not going to get caught in the case. And then when we have it like this, let's go ahead and put our bottom screws in. Now, to keep our cable in place, what I made was this little bracket from a Diet Shasta Cola can. You don't have to use Diet Shasta. You can use the soda of your choice. It's just a thin little aluminum bracket, and it's going to fit right over that. And there you can see the brackets installed. And it's keeping the cables out of the way. And then we just go ahead and put in that top screw over here. Oh, by the way, I reinforced the back of the cable with 3 or 4 pieces of tape. It makes it good and stiff. That way it's going to make a good connection into our DSI connector. And we'll go ahead and use a little tape just to go ahead and keep it nice and clean on the back. So we're just going to slip these 2 bottom grommets over these 2 studs right here. Okay, there we have it. We have our bracket in place. We have it placed on the 2 bottom studs down here. And then up here, we are going to go ahead and put our top bracket. Okay, now we have these screwed in. We have it on the post. Now it's time to put on our front bezel. This is the front bezel that I've modified that we're going to go ahead and fit over that. And if you look, here's an original bezel. You can see how much plastic I had to remove in order to fit the new LCD. The bezel just snaps into place. I had snapped it on, but then I took it back off. I had to remove the protective film. So now all we have to do is screw in 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after the screws are in, we go ahead and put in our little rubber bushings that go over the top of them. And they just press in, like that. Well, there it is, ready to plug into the Raspberry Pi. And the Raspberry Pi is mounted to the PC card slot bracket. Yeah, right there. I've got those 2 bolts, or screws, excuse me. And then I have these pads that are layered on top of each other. And it's going to sit right there. And when we put our bottom case on, it's going to press down on there. And the Raspberry Pi is not going to go anywhere. That is nice and secure. I like this setup because look at there. If you want to change OSs, all you got to do is pop out your SD card. You have access to it. And there it is, our DSI cable. It's plugged into our DSI connector. Take it, flip it over, and see it. Oh, it's beautiful. Okay, here's an eMate board that I just repaired. Now, if you're doing this upgrade, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're doing it with an eMate that is no longer repairable. I do not advocate tearing apart a perfectly good eMate just to upgrade it to a Raspberry Pi. Now, what you would take off your bad board would be the power jack, the 2 sliding potentiometers, this 8-pin socket, this 16-pin socket, and your audio jack. Now let's take a look at this nasty little circuit board that I came up with. It's going to hold our Ethernet breakout. It's going to hold our USB breakout. It will mount our PAM8406 audio amplifier. And it's going to provide a mounting for the PiJuice, which is going to charge our battery and power the Raspberry Pi. And here's the USB breakout that I've wired up. I also made a breakout for the Ethernet cable. And we have our on and off switch for the PiJuice. Now, the eMate originally came with mono sound, but I wanted to use both sliders that are on the front. One was for contrast, one was for volume. Now we're going to have individual volume controls for each speaker. There is a left speaker, and our right speaker is going to mount below this. And here is an extremely low-profile breakout that's going to go from our PiJuice to our Raspberry Pi. Okay, here's our bracket with everything installed. Here you can see where we have the audio breakout. That's the headphone jack, and then this is going to plug into the Raspberry Pi AV jack. Here's the breakout for the USB 2.0. Breakout for our Ethernet, and this is where our battery is going to attach to. And then we have these 4 wires. I ran out of connectors. I'm going to go ahead and just tack these to the back of the Raspberry Pi. There's our on and off switch, speaker installed, flip it over, potentiometers wired into the amplifier. Oh yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get this installed into the eMate. And we're going to go ahead and put our ports cover on. And it goes right there. Get the port cover bolted down. Make sure the wires for our left-hand speaker are out of the way to the side. And then we're going to carefully put this down because we want to engage the sliders. Now, let me talk about our on and off switch for a second. What I had was an extra keyboard. So I went ahead and I cut out the socket for the key. And then I went ahead and I cut a square right there. And there is our power switch. All right, here's our on and off switch. And it's going to mount right there. 2 screws. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the battery connector. It is going to mount right there. And there you can see where our battery connector is mounted. Looks good. And then I've already mounted the audio jack. Let's go ahead and install the Raspberry Pi. First we put our DSI cable on. Then we're going to go ahead and plug in our 5-volt plug-in audio. And then bolt down the PC card cover right there. Okay, now we've got that screwed in. Let's hook everything up. Here's our USB 2.0, our Ethernet. And then we're going to go ahead and solder on our leads for our speakers and tack down these wires to the rear of the pins. You cannot tell me that did not come out clean. Would you take a look at that? Let's get the keyboard on. Go ahead, open it up, and then we're going to take those flex cables and we're going to feed them through right there. We're going to put those tabs in at the front and then press it in at the rear. And our keyboard is almost installed. The only thing we have to do now is go ahead and put on that cover. There. Okay, and the reason I had to remove the keyboard is because I had to drill holes for my keyboard controller board. I said to myself right before I start to drill, Billy, you know, it might not be a bad idea to remove the keyboard. Now we have our keyboard installed, and our controller board is this. This is a Teensy LC connected to an Adafruit FPC breakout board. Looks good, doesn't it? Now, I can't take credit for this. The man who does deserve credit for it is a Mr. Frank Adams. Let's go over to his site. Okay, so we come to the Instructables page of Mr. Frank Adams. Very smart and very nice fella. He's got some really great Instructables here. The one we're going to take a look at is how to make a USB laptop. Now, make sure you read the entire Instructable. I made the mistake of stopping whenever Frank started discussing the Chibi OS, TMK, and QMK. At this point, I thought I would go ahead and get ahead of the game and download all the software, read the documentation, and then continue on with the Instructable. After 3 hours of using the terminal to download all the packages and supporting software and reading the documentation, I came to the conclusion that there has to be an easier way. And sure enough, I came back to the Instructable, and then 1 paragraph down, Frank explains you don't need TMK or QMK. The only thing you need are the Teensy bootloader and Teensy Duino. Well, and his instructions and his INO code that you're going to modify. So please read the entire Instructable. And it's been made even easier for you because Frank has uploaded the INO that I modified to his GitHub repo. We'll go ahead and go over there. Ta-da! Go here. Download the zip from his GitHub, and you are going to be good to go. There it is. I have the controller installed. I've got it all screwed down with the 2 screws back here. This only weighs like 19 grams, just a little bit more than Elliott Page. So those 2 bolts are going to be more than enough to hold it. It's good and steady. Then I went ahead and I plugged in the USB to the USB 3.0 port, and now we're ready to go. Now everything's installed. Let's go ahead and put on our little peripherals here. Here's our little rubber handle, and here we have our Clone Trooper LED housing, our infrared port. We just put on the rear case. It just snaps on. Yeah. Here it is with the rear case snapped on. If we look in there, oh yeah, that is nice and clean. Now, even though this is a touch screen, I still want to use a mouse. And we have pretty easy access to this. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in a dongle for my mouse. Let's talk about the battery. I wanted a larger battery than the 1820 mAh battery that came with the PiJuice. And they have options where you can install a 5,000 milliamp hour or 12,000 milliamp hour battery. But those batteries are sold out. So what I did was I found a 8,000 milliamp hour battery that has a thermistor. Well, I had to do a custom setup in the PiJuice software, and it seems to be working okay so far. Let me show you how I mounted it. This is a stock battery cover for eMate 300, and if you look here, you see those ribs, and then they have this reinforcing rail going across here. Well, I wanted my battery to sit nice and flat against that, so what I did was I shaved down all those ribs. I made it nice and flat, put some tape across there so it give it a little bit of traction, and then I installed these two mounting studs. There are screws on the back, not too obtrusive. And then you take your 8,000 milliamp battery, you put it right there, and then you're going to take this funky bracket. Oh yeah, that looks funky enough to be factory, doesn't it? Anyway, I went ahead and I coated it with tape so it doesn't short anything out if anything were to come in contact with it, and it's going to mount just like that. And we go ahead and install our two screws. I made this a little bit longer than it needs to be because I wanted it to where I could go ahead and lift this off and have plenty of room to unplug it from the socket. So if this battery goes dead, if you can have a backup, that's going to be right there. All you have to do is remove these two machine screws, and then remove these two bolts, and you can go ahead and change out your battery. Ah, that's great. So let's plug up our battery. And of course, it's only going to fit one way. Go ahead and move our wires around to over here so they're not hitting anything. Put our pad in place, and just go ahead, put these two machine screws in, and that's it. Our eMate is all together. Yeah, look at that. Well, I haven't put the rear screws in yet, but I'm not really worried about that. I'm not in a hurry. It's held together pretty good by just snapping together. Yeah, you can see your cable. Pretty neat. See-through. Oh, almost forgot. Let's take a look at the ports cover. If we go ahead and slide it this way, look, we have our USB 2.0. And if we slide it this way, we have our Ethernet breakout. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Unfortunately, you can't use them together at the same time. Oh well. And then on this side, there is our SD card, full access. And to go ahead and power our PiJuice and Raspberry Pi at the same time, I went ahead and got this 5-volt, 5-amp power supply. And I tell you what, I was really lucky because it came with this adapter. The barrel jack for the eMate is 4.7 times 1.7. Now, this is a 4.0 times 1.7, but it fits fine. Let's go ahead and plug it up. Plug it into our barrel jack. And look at there. Yeah, we can see it's charging. I would really love to move that LED to right there. Yeah, that would look good. And look how flush that power switch came out. I like that momentary switch. It's got a good clunk to it. And I put the Apple emblem back in. Yeah. Okay, so all we have to do is hit our power switch. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go ahead and speed up the boot process because we've all seen it before. All right. Yeah, like I said, touch screen. Yeah. And of course I have my mouse. And then look, the PiJuice software lets you know. All you gotta do is hover over it. I thought so. Yeah, I'm at 98%. Let's go ahead and unplug it. And then it shows that it's unplugged. Yeah. You know, for some reason, I can't get it to charge past 98%. I don't know what the problem is here. And at first I was worried about the Wi-Fi, but it's working now. Before it said wireless LAN, not associated, but then I reloaded the PiJuice software, and now the LAN is okay. Huh. Well, anyway, and here's the PiJuice software. Let's go ahead and take a look at the configuration for the battery. There's the custom configuration that I did for the battery I have. That looks good. Let's go ahead and test out the keyboard. Yep, works fine. Hey, let's do a little internet browsing. Let's go to YouTube and test out the sound. Search for a great video. Let's see if you can pick up that sound because those speakers are really small. But yeah, that audio amplifier is doing a great job. It really is. It's running off the 3.3 volt on the Raspberry Pi. Let's go ahead and cut volumes down. Let's go ahead and cut our right volume up. And then let's cut our left volume up.
information on the back, and I'm going to put another cutout. Something like
And that was so much cheaper than any audio hat that you could get for the Pi. That little PAM8406 unit. Don't go ahead and log off or shut down using the menu. Go ahead and press the button until it turns off. Because if you don't do that, the Raspberry Pi is going to continue to drain your battery. And there you go. And that, my friends, is the eMate Raspberry Pi. Or should I say the Pimate? I haven't decided on a name for it yet, but I did do this custom serial number. Yeah. I really love the way that project came out. I'm probably going to do another one. Now, I'm going to be uploading videos on a regular basis now, more regular basis, since I lack gainful employment. And I'm going to have a lot more projects coming up. One of the projects that was inspired by this was, oh yeah, look at that. So until next time, I'm Billy. I hope you have a great week. I hope you stay safe. And remember, you make a kid's day and you take them fishing.